Thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final session of the day. It's my pleasure to guide us through this discussion and to hopefully continue some of the thought-provoking discussion which has taken place throughout the day so far. I'll just remind you, if you wish to ask questions, please use the stage chat, and I'll try and keep an eye on that as the panel go through their discussion. As Ben said, this session is on people and places. It kind of brings our discussion today quite nicely round in a full circle from Bridget McConnell's keynote address or opening remarks earlier today, when she spoke about Glasgow's been on a journey of regeneration and growth for the last 30 years, and culture, sport and events have very much been at the heart of that. Rooted in Glasgow's unique identity are its people, and it's no accident that People Make Glasgow is the city brand for us. So we look forward to speaking to our panel members this afternoon and hearing more about their events and their host cities, and how we can use events to develop our greatest assets in terms of people and place. So we'll do that through roughly 3 loose themes. We'll kick off with the role of events and the role events can play in enhancing and developing a destination brand, how events can support a city's existing ambitions in terms of its citizens and its communities. And finally, hopefully time allowing, we'll go on to the role of events in building connections between people and place, particularly in this time of COVID recovery. So I will introduce Tim, who I believe is going to kick off with a presentation for us.
Hello, thank you very much for your welcome, and it's great to be here at the Host City Conference this year. Yes, my name's Tim Briercliffe. I'm Secretary General of AIPH, which is the International Association of Horticultural Producers, and we have the role of approving international horticultural exhibitions. But just to introduce you to those, I have a short video, and I'll follow that with a short presentation. Have the video now, please.
AIPH is the International Association of Horticultural Producers, and our mission is to be the world's champion for the power of plants. As our planet becomes increasingly urbanized, so environmental, health and economic challenges intensify. For a world facing the challenges of climate change, there has never been a time when living green has been so important. Hosting an international horticultural exhibition gives the opportunity for your city to lead the world in creating greener cities for the future.
For a city to host an international horticultural exhibition is an amazing opportunity for them to position themselves on the world stage, so that everybody will be able to recognise that this city is a green city. Through the inspirational use of plants, of flowers and trees, the creation of an amazing expo park will attract many, many tourists and visitors, and it will attract participants from around the world. And in the long run, it will also encourage more people to live in that city, it will encourage businesses to invest in that city, and it will define that city as a city focused on green development long into the future.
Thank you. And as if you want to see the full version of that presentation, you can view it on the in our booth in the sponsors area. So I want to just give you a little bit of an introduction. AIPH is the world's champion for the power of plants, and our members are associations representing the horticulture industry around the world. We have a role stated in international convention going back to the 1920s. So if a country wants to host an international horticultural expo, then they invite other countries to participate through diplomatic channels, then they require the approval of AIPH, much the same way as world expos require the approval of the BIE. It's important for AIPH to raise the profile and the importance of the use of plants in the landscape worldwide, and the expos provide an amazing way to do this in a way that also supports cities. We have a number of categories of exhibition that we approve. The A1 Expo is also requires the recognition of the BIE and enables a country to invite other countries to take part through diplomatic channels. The B category is looking at cities, and cities will invite other cities internationally to also create an international event. So the events will include many different countries. They will cover areas from 25 to 500 hectares, and they include education on green issues, B2B activities, and horticultural expertise, and of course they are just an amazing visitor attraction. They have a long history. First A1 Expo like this was the Floriade in Rotterdam back in 1960, and since then we have had many expos in many different countries. Recent examples you can see in front of you there. We have had recent examples. Last year in Beijing, we had an A1 Expo, and we're also running from 18 to 19. We had an Expo in Taichung. Between them, they attracted over 16 million visitors. We have had expos also in Antalya, in Turkey, other cities in China, in Suncheon, in Korea, and in Germany and Thailand, as you can see. In terms of our calendar of upcoming expos, we have expos planned in 21 in Yangzhou in China, Hatay in Turkey. We have the expo, the next Floriade, which you can hear more about tomorrow during a session, will be in Almere near Amsterdam in 2022. And we have expos coming up in Turkey, South Korea, in Doha, in Qatar, and others, and Yokohama, finishing in Yokohama in Japan in 27 is as far as we have booked up just now. The expos typically run for up to 6 months, an average of 5.8 million visitors, with visitors, local, national and international visitors. They have a age range across the spectrum, with older age ranges, younger age ranges. Most people are coming for leisure reasons, but also there is a business aspect to it as well. The expos have a significant impact on the city themselves. And with some work we did last year with MI Associates, we calculated that the direct economic impact of an expo is on average 527 million euros in terms of benefit to that city. And that doesn't include all the indirect benefits that come from creating an amazing park. There are many reasons why cities will host an expo, and many benefits that they can gain from it. In terms of developing their city, Suncheon in South Korea has used it for that reason. Floriade in Almere is using it to develop their city as part of their next stages. It can be used for promoting the city internationally. Antalya in Turkey did this, and certainly Beijing last year did that as well. It can be used to stimulate environmental and sustainable practices, such as this expo that took place in Qingdao in 2014. And art, culture and education, such as the last Floriade that took place in the Netherlands in 2012. It can be used to stimulate the growth of the horticulture industry within that country, such as this one in Taipei in 2010. And it can be used for conferences and seminars and events. And critically, such expos leave an amazing legacy. In the left side, you see the planned building which should be left after the expo in Doha in Qatar, in the amazing Al Bida Park in the center of the city. And this will be a legacy which will last for a long time. In the top right, you have the legacy from the Pacific Flora Expo in 2004 in Japan, still serving the city. And below, the legacy from Taipei Expo in 2010, examples of amazing things that have been left to still support those cities after the event. So maybe it's your turn to inspire the world with your own international horticultural exhibition. Please visit our booth if you're interested in any more information, and I look forward to answering the questions and joining this panel today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks for kicking off our panel session this afternoon, and welcome to our other panel members who have joined us. We will go straight into our first theme, I think, in terms of the role of events in developing and enhancing a destination brand, building on Tim's presentation there. But I would invite each of the panel members to introduce yourself, your organisation, and perhaps your interests in this subject, and maybe even what city in the world you're joining us from this afternoon. So first of all, we'll kick off with Terry. Terry, I was struck about the message which was at the heart of the Baltimore-Maryland bid film. Can you tell us, how is Baltimore using its sense of place and people to create a unique proposition in its bid to host 2026 FIFA World Cup matches?
Well, Joanne, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Our people and our place are synonymous with our bid. We hope to convey in every message and everything that we do the tonality of Baltimore being a great place to play, a great place to live, and a great place to be. And because of that, we are making sure that when we use terms like "we are in," we mean everybody's in. The city, the state, the citizens, the youth clubs, the pro leagues, and everything. We are making sure that we are synonymous with everybody being in. And we're leveraging our World Cup opportunity to show just that. We're united as one, the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, to make sure that we showcase to the region, to the nation, and to the world that Baltimore is the right place to host large-scale sporting events.
And Tim, back to yourself. We've heard that obviously cities often stage events in line with their existing credentials and ambitions. How do the events that you approve help a host city define their green identity? And in particular, how can this contribute to a longer term strategic approach for a city?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think the International Horticultural Expos provide a great opportunity to showcase green innovation and to set the scene for the development of a city into the future. Typically, they are built on an area of land that may need some redevelopment, and it can show how you can create sustainable green developments, and how you can then also, they would typically implement green measures across the whole of the city. So if you're hosting one of these expos for 6 months, then they try to get the whole city involved, to get citizens involved in showing how they can use plants and the landscape to improve their lives, to demonstrate how the correct use of plants in the cities makes really living green cities that they're better places for people to live. So more people are attracted there, more businesses are attracted there. People become educated in what matters in a real quality of life. So in the long term, of course, you're left with a legacy of an amazing park, an amazing facility which can be used as part of your development of the city. And the expo in the Floriada coming up in Almere in the Netherlands in 2022 will be using it to develop an area of the city and to create it into to help define it as a green city. Suncheon in South Korea used it to become the first national garden in South Korea, and to really define itself as a green center to attract business as well to set up there. And of course in Doha in Qatar, their focus is on greening the desert, and so to be a pioneer and a leader in how you do those things you can use the expo to do that as well.
Thank you, Tim. And to our final panellists for this session, to Andy from Birmingham 2022, can you help explain to us how the Commonwealth Games can help Birmingham accelerate its existing ambitions for the city, thinking in particular around the development of the destination brand through economic or cultural change?
Good afternoon, Joe. Pleasure to be with everybody today as part of Host City 2020. Yeah, absolutely. So a few things just to share. I mean, I think a key part of the Birmingham 2022 mission is about putting the city and the region on the map. And certainly this is one of the main reasons as to why Birmingham wants to host the games in the first instance. I think it's fair to say that the knowledge and perceptions of Birmingham and indeed the West Midlands region domestically and internationally can sometimes be low and often inaccurate, particularly when compared to other UK destinations. So with that very much in mind, the games will put the city and the region very much centre stage, as we'll have an estimated global viewing audience for around 1.5 billion for Birmingham 2022. We're also hoping to welcome hundreds of thousands of visitors to the city for the games, and many of those people who have never been to the city before, as we make over 1 million tickets available to the general public. So really is a huge opportunity to showcase Birmingham and the wider region to the UK and internationally as well. From a broader games impact story, and from the CGF's and the Commonwealth Games Value Framework Report that is produced by PwC, they've suggested and have found that a games can bring about £1 billion worth of economic benefit to the host city, and further yields a 25% uplift in tourism for the next 3 years for that host city. And as part of our work with Birmingham 2022, the Trade, Tourism and Investment Programme will be accompanying the games activity itself, and I think really offers a strategic and progressive yet pragmatic approach to what we're seeking to do, really drawing on the depth, breadth and distinctiveness of the region, the culture and the offer that we have within the West Midlands and Birmingham. And certainly I think we recognise as an organising committee and with our delivery partners that within the competitive placemaking environment, there is now a real imperative, certainly for Birmingham, that without active intervention, Birmingham and the West Midlands will slip further behind comparator destinations and fail to break that cycle of underperformance. So the Games, I think, just to conclude, really offers a catalysed timeline to deliver the sort of change that you saw.
Thanks, Andy. That's great. We've heard a little bit there about the power of place. So let's move on to the power of people now, and how events can support a city's aspirations for its citizens and communities, obviously at the heart of those cities. So Tim, we'll come to you first. How can horticultural events be used as a catalyst to introduce lasting benefits to a city, but in particular to its citizens?
Well, I think this is a really important aspect of what any event should do, and horticultural expos have the advantage in that what is left from there remains there long into the future. So you're creating a green legacy, and much of what is put in place will stay there, and what we find is that the citizens of that city become very proud of the green infrastructure and legacy which has been put in place. There's a lot of work in the preparation stages in the years running up to an expo to get the buy-in of citizens and to get them involved in understanding how they're going to use plants and the landscape, how they're going to contribute their part to making it a successful event, and how their lives will be enhanced. And I think the example from Taichung is a good example of how citizens really, it became something very important to them that their expo was in their city. And for many, it brings a international attention to that city, which it maybe didn't always have before. Some of the cities that host are already major international events, but the city of Venlo in the Netherlands hosted Floriada in 2012, and many senior people from many different countries came and made that and put it on the map in many ways. So it really became and it becomes something which is valued and important, and citizens become proud of a city that has an expo and effectively becomes use it as a catalyst to make their city a green city.
Thanks, Tim. And unfortunately, Monica's had to nip away, so we've lost Monica from our panel this afternoon. But Andy, we'll come back to you in terms of people and moving to the volunteer programme that obviously you're running as part of 2022. How important do you think it is that the Birmingham 2022 volunteer programme reflects the communities of Birmingham? And do you think this helps to deliver lasting benefits for the city?
I do, and I think it's critical and a really good question. We have a number of core strategic pillars as part of our volunteer strategy for Birmingham 2022, and two of those really talks to ensuring the local impact from the games, and the second part to that, which goes perhaps a little lower deeper, pertains to really ensuring that we attract a diverse workforce that represents the richness of Birmingham and the West Midlands. And I guess, why is that important to your question? I mean, I genuinely think from experience, and I was very fortunate to be part of London 2012 and the Games Maker program that was hugely successful, and spent the last 8 years in the United States with other international events like the Super Bowl and others, and really seen firsthand that volunteers can genuinely make the difference between a good and a great games. And for us, for Birmingham 2022, we recognise that this is not just any other Commonwealth Games. We really are at a seminal moment in time, given the broader macro and micro implications that there is within the world with COVID-19. And with that in mind, with any volunteer programme, certainly on the scale that is connected to the Commonwealth Games or Olympics or a major event, there is often a numbers challenge that comes with in terms of opportunities often being oversubscribed by the general public. We most recently saw that with the NHS, perhaps, when they launched their programme to attract volunteers and received over 250,000 people within just 24 hours and 750,000 after just 3 days. So for us, it is absolutely critical. We want to be able to attract local people who have the passion for the region and the knowledge as well, recognising they very much become the faces of the events. I'm not sure if the audience is aware, but Birmingham has the youngest population of any major city in Europe, with 46% of Birmingham residents under the age of 30. So for us, again, ensuring that our volunteer programme really represents the local demographics, and we have the youth there very much as part of that programme, and the 187 different nationalities that are represented in Birmingham, again, will be critically important for us as well.
Thanks, Andy. And I wonder if I could ask you just a follow-up question, which has come through on the chat from Jose. So thank you for your question, Jose. He says, while London 2012 changed perceptions about people with disability and was a very inclusive workforce, the disability sport legacy and city accessibility could have been better. What is Birmingham doing differently?
It's an interesting question. I think it's always going to be a challenge for a host city to be able to deliver across that agenda. I mean, immediately what I'd say is that we are integrating the largest para games in any form of Commonwealth Games history as part of what we're doing with Birmingham 2022. So it's embedded in everything that we're doing and all of the planning that we're doing within the organising committee. We're very fortunate to have some very effective working partnerships with our local authority delivery partners, with Birmingham City Council very much as the lead, and working closely with them on an everyday basis in terms of devising the necessary plans to ensure that the service levels provided for all client groups, the athletes, of course, but also the spectators and others who will be looking to visit Birmingham for the games, will have a phenomenal experience as they come. We're soon to recruit an EDI director who's going to be leading our efforts from the early part of next year who again is going to be picking up these reins and moving everything forward to ensure that we really do have an inclusive approach to everything that we do with our operational plans.
That's great, thank you, and thanks to Jose for that question as well. Moving back to Terry, how does hosting the FIFA World Cup matches in 2026 help strengthen Baltimore's communities? And what are the ambitions for Baltimore in terms of the potential for the event to drive change in this area?
Well, it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. Baltimore has been going through a renaissance for some period of time now, and it's something that you wouldn't know unless you lived, worked, or played here. We see this as an opportunity, unlike many other cities, to showcase ourselves and also show our citizens the power of sport and how it connects people and energizes people for a common good. I think Tim mentioned legacy. We're hoping the legacy of this event is far beyond the games in 2026. We don't experience any different challenges than most large and mid-sized cities. However, we believe that our team, our host delegation, our officials, both at the city and state level, that our ability to host global events like the World Cup launches Baltimore in a conversation that currently doesn't exist and hasn't existed in any of our lifetime. So we're hoping that this is the catapult for the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland on a world-class stage to showcase our capabilities, to unite our citizens, and to leave our future generations a better place to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Terry. So we'll move on now to talking about how events can try and build connections between people and place. And Tim, we'll maybe come to you first. Can you let us know a little bit about the importance that volunteers play in the visitor experience to international horticultural expos?
Yeah, certainly. I think the whole process of recruiting volunteers and using volunteers is very important within the event. It's critical in getting the engagement of the city, the host city itself, as part of that process. Some of the expos will involve volunteers before the event opens in showing people the site, and they maybe have a kind of making of program, which will enable them to show, to prepare, to build up some of the educational themes, some of the communication themes, and volunteers can get involved and to start to get a sense of ownership within the city from it as well is important. And of course, there's the need for volunteers during the event itself. As it's an event that will go over about 6 months, then it's quite different for volunteers to commit time to something like that compared to a short-term event. But we've never found that expos have a difficulty in finding people to get involved in that. Maybe they will take a kind of responsibility for one of the national gardens that are being presented there, and they will give people tours of those. Maybe they will lead people around the site. They'll have a VIP role or whatever it might be. But we find that whether they are students or people who are retired or anyone who wants to give some time, they're always welcomed, and often thousands of volunteers are involved in every expo, and it becomes a memory that will stay with them for their whole lifetimes, and they find it extremely rewarding. So it's not a difficulty in finding them, and I believe sincerely that they are a critical part of what makes this event and any other type of event really successful, and to make it the pride of the place where it's hosted.
There's certainly great pride taken in volunteers as we've seen at events, and how that contributes to the unique experience that spectators and visitors can get in a city. So, Andy, moving kind of developing that point a little bit, and the importance of imprinting, I guess, the culture of a city and its people on an event. How will you encourage local residents in the West Midlands to participate in the volunteer programme, and how would you maximise the opportunities that it does present the residents?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I just would sort of build on the prior speaker in terms of what he just alluded to there. I think with Birmingham 2022, sort of tagline really, it is a games for everybody. And so one of our bigger challenges and opportunities, quite frankly, that we have ahead of us is to ensure that local people genuinely feel that this is their games and they can be a part of that. I think many of us on the call will have experiences that you have those lifetime multi-gamers who will volunteer almost every year or every couple of years when there is an opportunity that is within their country or even internationally, quite frankly, to travel, because it does offer this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that has been discussed, and the chance to be part of something that is very much bigger than themselves. So in terms of our actions and what we will be doing over the coming months, just in advance of launching the volunteer programme in the summer of 2021, a lot of it really is working in close partnership internally with our marketing communications team. Everybody might be familiar with, again, London 2012, perhaps as a good example of the Games Maker brand, which has now become really sort of synonymous with the success of that programme. And that sort of innovative thinking has been echoed in multiple other games and events elsewhere internationally. So really coming up with a unique messaging that can help bring disparate individuals and thousands of individuals together to feel that they're very much part of one team, and at the same time come up with messaging that is both inspiring yet informative at the same time. I think it's really imperative that you are able to set the right expectations from the very outset, that people understand what the opportunity is and what we're asking of volunteers in the first instance. And I think once you can set that groundwork, The next layer of real exercises that really needs to come into play is that then ongoing engagement. We know that we can only, as an organising committee, go so far and so deep within the community. And again, fortunate, would always recommend working with local partners established with the organising committee to become the mouthpiece for ourselves. They have the existing relationships and the trust already within the community, so we'll be very much leveraging those relationships that they have to be able to impart the core messages that we want. In terms of benefits, we're very fortunate. We think with the games, there's going to be over 35,000 opportunities connected to Birmingham 2022, somewhere in the region of 13,500 volunteer opportunities, and many more in terms of paid opportunities across the board. So we're already working with the West Midlands Combined Authority, who are providing funding to be able to upskill local people where there are skills gaps within the region. And we recognise already in terms of the short-term paid roles and opportunities we'll have, we'll be able to upskill and provide that long-term training development to bring people back into the workplace pre-games and potentially support them into games opportunities and then post as part of the legacy opportunity. And another example I could talk to is just, again, how we might be able to provide training and development opportunities where we could offer certified training to our broader workforce, again, supporting them in their own respective growth in the build up to the games, but again, can take those qualifications with them as they look for their future career direction and progression long after the games as well.
Thank you. And Terry, building on that a little bit, how can hosting events support the creation of partnerships with the local community, and how can that support the longer term benefit for the city and its people?
Well, I'm going to take the approach on this question a little differently than you might expect. If there's anything that we've learned during this downtime of COVID, is it's allowed us to build partnership that honestly we probably may not have created and or have landed on because of the fast-paced environment of our office, and we're always going at 1,000 miles an hour, trying to get from point A to point B. But because of the cancellations and the postponements, we've been able to dive deeper into the grassroots of the backbone of some of our larger scale events in order to create better strategic legacy plans, allowing us to engage different stakeholders, as it pertains to sustainability, human rights and human workforce, creating messaging that talks about things greater than just the games themselves, but using the platform of sports and sporting events as that tool to allow us to create those partnerships, to create those collaborations. And, in general, sports are usually apolitical, so us forging these partnerships in the sense of community has really been at the core of what we've used this quote unquote downtime as we prepare to come out of the current state. And things like the World Cup, the Maryland 5-Star and the Maryland Cycling Classic are all major mega events that are allowing us to create new relationships, new partnerships, and engaging our citizens at a higher level in delivering the events in the future years where we might not have had that opportunity if we weren't able to take this pause in time.
Yeah, it's certainly something we're not used to as host cities and rights holders in events, having more time to deliver an event. So it's really interesting to hear how people have used that time to strengthen other areas. So I've actually got a follow-up question for you, Terry, from David McRae. He says, hello from Gwyn Oak, I hope I have pronounced that correctly, in West Baltimore, Charm City. His question is, has Baltimore been given a timeline for transition from candidate city to potential host city in 2026? He's saying a former Scot and now a proud Baltimorean.
Thank you for the question. Actually, we're in the next phase of the process, which is we're anticipating a site visit from FIFA into the city of Baltimore in the state of Maryland in early to mid 2021. That timeline for delivery on decision as to whether we'll be a host city will be determined in late 2021. So a time period that was supposed to last over about 1.5 years now will be consolidated into about a 7-month window.
Great, thank you for answering that. We'll move on to our final theme, which is around picking up on a lot of the discussion already today around events in a post-COVID world. The same question for all panellists. We'll maybe start with Andy. Does the role of events in society differ in a post-COVID world? You know, does it change the focus for audiences, their experiences, or perhaps the measures of success? I know one of the areas we were asked to look at was around the contribution of people and volunteers to the economy. Is that a focus, or is perhaps that something which has changed?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think, to be honest with you, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword in terms of how I'd probably best respond to that. I think on one side, I think for us right here, right now, Birmingham 2022 is a great news story at an incredibly challenging time for the West Midlands, the region, and the country as a whole. The government is incredibly supportive of the event itself, and we've continued to recruit and procure even during the pandemic. So we're ideally placed, I think, to aid the regional recovery as it looks to come out of to COVID. Similarly, for every £1 that Birmingham is investing in the games, the government is putting in £3 as part of that. So again, it's driving some real tangible benefits. On the flip side of that, I think the other side of the sword is that COVID has also exposed the ethnic and diversity challenges within Birmingham. I think it's fair to say unemployment rate has increased by 68%. 1 in 4 18 to 24-year-olds are currently unemployed. And why I say that is, I think this is, for me, would be the sort of the focus of my answer, is that now the combined efforts of having a genuine story or narrative from an event combined with a tangible legacy becomes even more important than it was before COVID-19 when it comes to thinking about applying for and hosting major events such as this. So I wouldn't say necessarily that the focus alters. I think it just becomes even more clearer in terms of the sport into itself. The 11 days of sport for Birmingham 2022 is really obviously at the heart of what we're doing from an organising committee standpoint, but our ability to be able to create a narrative and demonstrate that there is long-term benefits for the city and for the region is incredibly important. And I think now, to sort of conclude, really, I would sort of share that the ongoing challenges presented by COVID can either fracture potential partnerships, which you just mentioned in a question. It can either go one of two ways. It can fracture those relationships that are required with organising committees and host partners. Or I think COVID can actually breed that opportunity to bring people together to realise the benefits that can indeed be derived from events during this very challenging time.
Thanks. And Tim, the same question for you in terms of the role. Does the role of events in society differ after this pandemic?
Yeah, it is an interesting question because it's obviously one we've been all asking throughout the year. And I feel that for us, if you're organising an expo at the moment, of course, this is bad because it's going to affect how you can continue the preparations, and your timescale and milestones become more challenging. But in terms of the appetite for such an event and the role they play, I think it's been really interesting because what we found is that so many people this year have had to spend so much time at home, and what they have exploring only the areas to which they could walk, and they have discovered the green areas that they do have near them or the green areas that they don't have near them. They've discovered their own gardens when they maybe had not spent much time in them before. So there's a real recognition now of the importance of having a nice place to live, whether it's the place that you own or the city in which you live, the areas that you have access to, and so on. So the kind of event that we are involved in is about creating a better city, creating something which will provide a better place to live onwards into the future, and enjoying the experience of plants and the environment and the landscape and all that goes with that. And people definitely this year have got a closer affiliation with that than they did before. And so this year, partly to my surprise, there were cities who are still pursuing and interested in getting started right now with preparing for their expos. We just are in the process of approval process for 2 cities, Chengdu in China, Izmir in Turkey. And as part of their expos for 24 and 26 respectively, they recognise that creating such events, the focus on sustainable green development of their cities and defining themselves as green cities is really important for the future. And bringing people together in events like this is really key. The city of Almere in the Netherlands, they asked themselves the question, can we still do this event in 2022? And they reviewed it very carefully and concluded, yes, actually, this is something that is really even more important now after it than before, because the world has recognized the value of the things that really count, of the landscape and the environment in which they live. And so it stimulated new interests in people. So we've been encouraged by that response. Of course, it means you have to do things a bit differently for now, especially those who are involved in the construction phases and so on. But I have coming out towards the end of this year quite positive, really, in terms of the role that events like this are going to play.
Absolutely, and I think maybe all taking a little bit more time might be one of the positive legacies to come out of all of this. Terry, is there anything you'd like to add to this part of the discussion?
I think Annie and Tim hit on a lot of critical points as it pertains to how COVID's going to impact the event space, whether it's the Commonwealth Games or whether it's in the horticultural world. People are just going to look at things differently. And we as event organizers and recruiters of activities to our destinations have to take in mind that there are going to be new policies and new procedures that we're going to have to implement. We're going to have to be very patient. We don't know when post-COVID is going to be. We don't know whether the vaccine, which is about to hit the market across the globe, is going to be that thing that gives people comfort that attending large-scale sporting events is in their best interest. Also, I think one of the things that COVID has created here in the U.S. is, people have been able to experience more home time, more family time, and the thing that once used to keep them, busy and occupying their time, i.e. like youth sports and collegiate sports and professional sports, now have no longer a primary means of engaging with the family or engaging with friends. They're finding other methodologies. So what does the sports landscape look in its totality post pandemic? I think it's going to be a unique challenge. But I think at the end of the day, people see the value of sport and people see the value of how it can connect people and bring an energy and an enthusiasm to a community. Therefore, I think the industry is going to thrive post-pandemic. However, I think it's going to have some newness to it, and I think it's going to have some things that we're going to have to create that are different for fans to, participate in a healthy and active way. As long as we listen to the scientists and the health experts, we're all going to be able to do our job, in a very efficient, effective manner, and make sure that our people who do participate and or come to spectate have good quality experiences and good lessons learned from going through a very unique and challenging time domestically, internationally, and globally.
Thanks, Terry. We've got a couple of questions that have come through from Ben. First one is for myself. What is the main tip other cities might take from Glasgow's journey of redevelopment and apply to their own situations? I was actually talking about this earlier this afternoon with someone, and I think the key thing, the Glasgow's journey has been over 30 years. So it is a long journey and it's about taking its time, and I think the key is authenticity, and it's about everything that you're doing along that regeneration and that growth journey. It's about being authentic, so being authentic to the people of the city, so for ourselves, to the people of Glasgow, to their heritage, and to the partnerships that are created to be a catalyst for the development going forward. I think also about being authentic towards, as we've talked about today, the destination brand and the culture of the city, being authentic to that and building on that, and using that where maybe required to change perceptions and to build positive perceptions and positive connotations, if you like. And I think in terms of, obviously we're talking about events and using sporting and cultural events as part of that journey, and making sure that, you know, they are also aligned with the brand or the strategic objectives of the city, and really being true to that, and keeping it authentic. And I think, you know, as we see in Scotland and in other countries as well, the big milestone events might come every 3 years, every 5 years, every 10 years. But it's about using the space in between that to consolidate. So in Glasgow, we obviously had the Commonwealth Games in 2014, and we had a volunteer programme for that. We had the European Championships, the inaugural combined European Championships in Glasgow in 2018, and we had, or we will have, Euro 2020 next year. And each of those big events had a volunteer programme. We've been talking about the importance of people and the importance of volunteers to that experience, and actually the importance of volunteers to being part of that authentic experience. And I think what we've done is used these events as milestone events, and then in the intervening years and the other events which take place, or the other activities in the city, is to consolidate that. So whether it's a volunteer programme or whether it's another element of the event, is use your milestone events as your place on the global stage. But actually everything's rooted in the community, and everything's rooted in the city and the people in its place, and actually use that time in between these milestone events to really consolidate that and maximise the benefits of that for the city. So that was a long-winded answer to say the main tip is probably stay authentic. And the second question was for Tim. What kind of cities might benefit from hosting an AIPH approved expo? For example, what size of city, what stage of development should they be at, or even the location of the city?
Well, that's an interesting question, because really we've had expos in all kinds of cities. We've as I told you last year, we had it in Beijing, it's a significant city, and we have it coming in Yokohama, which is also a very significant city. But also we're running events in smaller cities, Hatay and Kahramanmaraş in Turkey, for example. And so it depends in terms of what that city wants to do. A good example of a city, Tangshan in China, is a major steel producing city, and there was a significant area which needed redevelopment, and they used the expo to completely redevelop that. Now, it's not a high tier city in the Chinese order, significantly bigger still than any cities near where I am, but the different levels of city it can work with very well. I think there's a role in with Almere, for example, is quite a small city. But it's growing, and it was a new city created only a few decades ago, and it's gradually growing and increasing, and using it as part of a tool to expand itself as a city. So whether it's a city that wants to kind of redefine itself and moving forward, whether it's a young city that is growing, a city that wants to just redefine its image, I think depending on the kind of theme and a concept that the city develops for that expo, it can fit any kind of city and situation. But the best way is certainly to use it as an opportunity for enhancing that city and creating something which will have a lasting benefit and legacy.
And I think on that note of using opportunity, just as we draw this session to a close, as we mentioned, no one would have wanted a global pandemic, and we don't want to see the harm that it's doing to our people around the globe. But actually we have been presented with this opportunity of additional time, and it's about how we use that for the events which have been postponed and delayed, and how we use it to create new partnerships, as Terry mentioned, during this time of adversity, and to use it to strengthen the long-term benefits that an event might bring to a city. So maybe there is some light that we can find in some dark times. But on that kind of hope for the future, I'd just like to thank our panellists very much, and to Tim, good luck in your relationships with your future host cities and your future events, and to Andy and your team in Birmingham 2022, all the very best. for, I know Ian was saying earlier, it's a difficult time at the moment with all your new staff and not actually being able to be in the same place, but hopefully sometime soon you will all be in the office, and no time at all, we'll all be in Birmingham. And to Terry, good luck. Good luck with your bid and good luck with your FIFA visit. And we wish Baltimore and Maryland all the very best. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne, and thank you as well to Monica Stepniak from the Ministry of State Assets in Poland, who had to leave for a meeting, unfortunately. But that was a fantastic discussion covering an awful lot of ground in detail, which is always good.